The van screamed up the dark mountain road, its engine loud in the thin night air. Inside, two men sat in the front, Lawrence Bittaker at the wheel, Roy Norris beside him. In the back lay a metal toolbox, heavy and cold, its latches clicking with each bend. A frightened girl sat near it, her hands shaking as the van rattled. Bittaker's eyes stayed hard on the road. Norris glanced back and gave a small, careful smile that did not reach his eyes. The toolbox scraped the floor as the van climbed higher, higher, higher. The road narrowed. The wind grew sharper. Then, with a sudden stop near a lonely turnout, everything went quiet. Norris reached for the toolbox handle, slowly, like a door about to open into a place no one wants to go. His fingers curled around the lid. The girl's breath caught. What was inside that toolbox? And why had they driven so far from the city? This is how the story peaks. But it does not begin here. It begins with two men meeting where many bad plans start. Inside a prison, Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris were not famous. They were not rich. They were not special. But inside gray walls and long days, they found each other. They talked. They watched. They took notes on people like a dark hobby. And slowly, a terrible idea grew. It was simple and cruel. Get a van, find girls who were alone, and use tools to control them. They gave their plan a kind of routine, like someone planning a road trip. Only their road map led to harm. When they left prison, they did not leave their plan behind. Bittaker found a quiet place to stay. Norris did too. They got jobs that did not ask many questions. They learned the roads around Los Angeles, the beaches, the malls, the bus stops, the late-night corners. They bought a silver gray van and gave it a friendly nickname. They slid the side door to make sure it moved fast and quiet. They tested the seats. They practiced turns. They stocked a toolbox not for fixing engines, but for breaking people's safety. None of the tools looked strange at first glance. Many homes had them. That made the plan feel easy to hide. Their work days looked like lazy drives. They circled places where teenagers hung out. They watched who was alone and who was waiting for a ride. They tried different stories. You need a lift? You okay? We're headed that way. They learned how to smile without showing their intent. Sometimes their plans failed. A girl said no. A friend showed up. A parent's car pulled in. Those were the low moments for them, missed chances that made them grumble and try again. But then they would cheer themselves up with sodas, jokes, and maps marked with tiny dots. They were patient. They believed their moment would come. On a bright afternoon, the kind of day when the sea looks like glass, they cruised near a beach. Radios played. Kids laughed. The sun turned the van's roof warm. They acted casual. They asked harmless questions at a store counter. They drifted through the parking lot and watched the crowds. Bittaker kept his driving smooth. Norris scanned faces like he was reading a menu. It was all calm on the outside. On the inside, the plan waited like a spring. They saw a girl walking alone along the road away from the beach, carrying a towel and a small bag. She looked tired, maybe expecting a bus that never came. Norris leaned forward. "Her," he said softly. Bittaker nodded and slowed the van beside her. The window rolled down. Norris spoke in a friendly voice. "Need a ride? We're headed toward town." The girl looked at the empty road, and then at the van. She hesitated. Bittaker kept his face plain, almost bored. Norris pointed toward the city. The girl bit her lip and said okay. The van side door slid open with an easy whoosh. The girl climbed in. The door slid shut. The van rolled forward, blending back into normal traffic, like nothing special had happened. They asked small-talk questions. School music where she lived. The radio hummed. The tires brushed the painted lines. For a few minutes, everything felt ordinary again, like maybe this would just be a short ride and a safe drop-off. Then Bittaker missed the turn she suggested. He turned again. The roads grew quieter. Houses slipped away. Streetlights thinned. Hills rose. The sun tilted lower. The city shrank behind them, and the wind pressed harder against the van's skin. The girl noticed. "This isn't the way," she said, her voice small now. Norris looked back and gave that careful smile again. Bittaker pulled the van onto a narrow shoulder, the kind where the dust lifts in a soft cloud. He turned off the engine. The ticking of hot metal filled the hush. The air smelled like pine and dry earth. Norris reached for the metal toolbox. His hand found the handle. The latches gleamed. He flipped one latch open, then the other. The toolbox lid opened with a soft creak. Inside were things that looked ordinary but felt wrong in that quiet place. A roll of tape, a thin rope, a small cloth, a flashlight, and a little tape recorder with buttons all worn from use. Norris reached in and took the tape recorder like it was nothing special. The girl watched every move. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her breathing sounded loud in the small space. Bittaker spoke to her in a calm voice, the kind of voice someone uses when they want to seem safe. He said, "We're not going to hurt you if you do as we say." The words were a lie. The girl did not move. She looked at the road behind them through the tiny rear window. Night had come faster than she thought. The stars were small and faint. The van felt closed in like a room with no doors. Norris clicked the tape recorder on and held it near his chest like a toy. The light from the flashlight scratched shadows across the walls. The tape recorder made a soft hum. Bittaker leaned back and watched the girl. He checked the engine one more time with his hand. The van was warm. The toolbox rested between the two front seats like a quiet beast. They spoke to her in soft, easy sentences. They asked simple things about home and school. They tried to make her answer so they could learn the sound of her voice. The girl said her name, where she lived, and that she had been at the beach with friends. Her voice shook, but it was steady enough that they wrote her words on a small notepad. They liked to keep notes. They liked to mark what they did. It made them feel in control. Time moved in small pieces. The van sat on the side of the road. Crickets made a far-off sound. The girl thought her family and the bus stop she had missed. She planned in her head how she would tell someone what had happened. She listened to every small noise. Every sound felt like a clue. Norris put the cloth over the girl's hands for a moment to check something. He did not hurt her. He bound her hand with a rope, but did it in a way that did not leave marks at first. They used the roll of tape to cover her mouth, so she could not call out. She could not scream. Her heart beat very fast. The flashlight caught in her eyes and made her dizzy. She tried to think of a number, a name, a plan, but her mind felt slippery and slow. Bittaker and Norris talked in low voices. They argued a little over the route back into the city. They argued over the list of rules they had made. They also laughed sometimes, small sounds that did not belong with the night air. They were careful to keep the van looking normal. They wanted to avoid people who might look too close. They checked mirrors. They watched the road for anyone coming. Hours passed like a long knot. They drove to an old motel, and then decided to move again. They stopped at tiny stores for coffee and quiet, pretending they were tired men on a long trip. The girl listened and tried to count the miles. She tried to remember the names of the streets she had heard. When they stopped, they let her think the trip might end. They let her hope, but hope was a thin thing. At one stop, Norris switched on the tape recorder and clicked a small camera that sat in the toolbox. He wanted to take a photograph to show later. The girl felt the camera's lens like someone looking through a small black eye. She whispered a prayer and promised herself she would not forget any face, any sound, any number. The minutes after that were slow and full of small fears. They moved her from seat to make sure she could not find a way out. They checked the locks. They read the list of places to avoid and places that were safe for them. They planned the next move like people planning a small trip. It made them calm. It made them cruel. Then everything changed in a single sound far off on the dark road. An engine, strong and sudden, coming fast. Headlights cut the night like knives. Bittaker's hand grabbed the toolbox. Norris' eyes went wide. The van's silence broke in one loud moment. The girl's taped mouth could not call out. The headlights got closer. The car came around the corner too fast. The two men froze. The girl heard her whole body shaking. A second car was coming down the road, too close, too fast, and it was not on their map. The lights were bright, washing inside of the van in white. Someone was coming. The headlights burned through the windows like morning sun. For a heartbeat, It felt like rescue. The girl twisted her wrists, the rope biting into her skin, hoping whoever was driving might see her. But the van was parked just off the road, half hidden by a line of dry bushes. The other car slowed for a second, its tires crunching gravel. Then just as quickly it sped past, taillights shrinking into the dark until nothing was left but dust and silence. Her only chance was gone. Bittaker's jaw clenched. "Too close," he muttered. Norris let out a low breath and started to laugh, a strange, shaky laugh that didn't sound like joy. He shut off the flashlight and turned the tape recorder back on, the reel spinning with a soft hiss. The girl felt cold now, even though the air was warm. The road seemed endless, the night too quiet. Bittaker started the engine again. "We go higher," he said. Norris nodded. The van began to move, climbing the narrow path toward the mountains, each turn tighter than the last. Down below, the city lights looked tiny and far away, like another world. The drive took nearly an hour. Neither man spoke much. Norris flipped through their notes. Bittaker hummed along with the faint radio static. Every few minutes, one of them would glance back to make sure the girl hadn't moved. Her eyes were wide, wet with tears she couldn't wipe away. She thought if she stayed still enough, maybe they'd let her go. Maybe they'd just forget her. When they finally stopped, the van faced a cliff edge. The wind howled through the rocks. Norris opened the door, stepping out first. He stretched his arms and looked at the stars. "No one can hear anything up here," he said softly. Bittaker joined him. He looked around. The steep drop, the dark woods below, the empty road curling away. He smiled. Perfect. Inside, the girl began to cry through the tape. Her muffled sobs sounded small against the roar of the wind. Norris opened the side door and pulled her out roughly, her shoes scraping the dirt. He loosened the tape just enough for her to speak. She begged him to let her go, promised she wouldn't tell anyone. Her voice cracked with every word. For a moment, Bittaker just watched her, almost curious. "You're to help us," he said quietly. "We need to understand fear. You'll help us with that." The words made no sense to her, but to them, it was all that mattered. They began to record everything, their voices, her voice, the sounds of the mountain wind. They wanted to keep it, to replay the power they felt. The night turned heavier, darker. The girl screamed until her voice broke. The tape kept rolling. By dawn, silence filled the van again. The road back down was long, winding, and empty. Norris wiped his hands on a rag. Bittaker stared ahead, his eyes cold, saying nothing. The toolbox sat open between them, tools clinking softly as the van bounced on the rocky path. It was over, for now, but it was only the beginning of what they would call their project. In the weeks that followed, they drove those same roads again and again, Santa Monica, Redondo Beach, Hermosa, up through the canyons. They watched bus stops, parking lots, beaches. Sometimes they talked about what they'd done, like it was an experiment. Sometimes they were quiet, listening to recordings. Each time they drove, they grew bolder. Each time, the van felt more like a trap that rolled on four wheels. And each time, the toolbox grew heavier with what it represented. One evening, Norris spotted another girl walking home alone. She was young, with headphones around her neck and a soda can in her hand. Bittaker slowed the van beside her, his smile practiced, almost gentle. "Need a lift?" he asked. She hesitated, then shook her head and kept walking. Bittaker's smile faded. Norris' hand drummed on the dashboard. "Next one," he said coldly, but fate had already lined up another victim, just a few blocks away, a teenager waiting outside a convenience store for a ride that never came. The van turned the corner slowly. The side door slid open, and somewhere deep inside that metal box behind the seats, the tape recorder clicked on once more.